Alright, welcome to a Symbaroum cheat sheet. So I've made a simple 2-page printout for my local players and maybe for any players here online if we decide to run some games online. So again, I've talked about Symbaroum in the past. I've run 5 sessions for my local group over the last, since 2018. We ran 4 or 5 sessions before and I think 1 or 2 after Harold's demise. Anyway, I've run 5 sessions, and that's all. But of those 5, I knew before I asked my local guys to run it, especially with Harold and Steve, who were pretty adverse to anything other than OSR, especially Harold. I liked it so much that I convinced them to let me run it. We ran 5 sessions, and it's never left my consciousness. I love Symbaroum in every possible way. So I thought I'd make a cheat sheet since Brian and Josh and Phil want me to run them in some Symbaroum games. They're calling it a campaign. We'll see how long it goes. So this is my cheat sheet for them as well as anybody that might play with us online. I can always hand this PDF out. So quickly, the basics. The gist of this setting is a war with the Dark Lords has displaced all humans. They've crossed the Titan Mountains and they have settled in the Davokar lands. So the gist of it is humans have migrated over the mountains and they have settled and they waged a minor war to settle. All right, that kingdom is known as under the queen's name of Corinthia. They are known as humans are known as Ambrians. Or from Ambria, okay, the Promised Land. The north is dominated by a giant forest, Davokar. That's where most of the conflict lay, and that's where most of the treasure hunting and mystery and fortune seeking, and it's the heart of where we're going to adventure ultimately, right? The Davokar holds much danger, mystery, treasures, etc., and it is the home of the barbarian clans. The clans, as the Ambrians crossed the mountains, one of the clans lost a siege, and ultimately that's how the humans got a foothold, and the barbarians ultimately all came together. These 13 clans, or 12, now down to 11 clans, have united under one major chieftain, and they call Davokar. They live basically in a relationship with the Davokar forest ultimately, and they call one chieftain their main chieftain. However, there's still 11 unique clans. Okay, the Davokar is ultimately considered off limits by the Iron Pact. These are the elders, the elves for the most part, and they had made a pact with the queen a long time ago. Unfortunately, the queen hand waves it off as non-existent. But the Iron Pact believe any humans found in the Davokar should be killed. Okay, so that's kind of our setup, right? All the mountain ranges around the lowlands and the Davokar are basically not inhabited by civilization. The humans have not been able to build settlements that they could keep there. So the mountains become a safe harbor for robbers, bandits, outlaws, things like that. So you can use the mountains in adventures for these types of people, right? If they explore into the mountains for any reason. There are 3 races in the game: humans, Ambrians, barbarians, and the Elder Folk. The Elder Folk include all of these non-human races like elves, dwarves, ogres, goblins, etc. Ambrians are organized, war-ready, ambitious, conquerors, and rulers. They are also spiritual, and they seek knowledge. They're very much loosely based on a Christian, in my opinion, a Christian empire, right? Imposing itself upon another country or another civilization. Barbarians are multiple clans now united together. They live with nature and the Davokar, so they see themselves living among nature. Ambrians see themselves as against nature, right? These are traditional, ancient things that we definitely see in our real culture, right? And the elders believe they are of nature, and the elves of the Davokar have some animosity toward the Ambrians because of the Iron Pact Treaty, and they believe it gives them the right to kill human trespassers. I've already said that. All right, so here's our gods, basically, folks. The Ambrian god, the sun god Prios, and the giver of laws, that's the church. That is ultimately what the humans abide by. Barbarian clans all have their own god that they kind of revere, right? And they are all listed in the book, but I'm not going to go over all this stuff here. This would just be so people understand roughly what this is like. The older folk give thanks to nature itself, so they don't think a deity. They don't believe in a deity. If they get across the river, they thank the river. If they can survive the mountains, they thank the mountains, that kind of thing. So the elder of the nature. Indaros is our largest capital city. It's the home of the queen and the church headquarters, temple wall. Thistlehold is the town that borders the Davokar that all of the adventurers will live in and will start their expeditions from, is Thistlehold, a large kind of mass melting pot of races, cultures, peoples, and it's the home city, and it literally borders the Davokar, right? Okay, the Davokar is broken into two things: the light Davokar, the dark Davokar. The light Davokar are already lightly explored, inhabited portions of the forest. The dark are very dangerous, overgrown, and less known areas of the Davokar. Okay. Culture, and then there's the Karvasti, which is the Mesa headquarters of the barbarian stronghold and the High Chieftain. So the Karvasti is the city of the barbarians, and it's in Davokar. All right, culture. The humans and the barbarians are storytellers. Barbarians in particular hold great storytellers in high regard. The chief will always have 2 storytellers in-house. Humans prefer bards, poets, actors, dancers in their stories. Barbarians enjoy rituals and communing with witches and weapon games. Ambrians pursue many hobbies, professions, and enjoy social outings with meals and entertainment, not to mention religious ceremony. And Ambrians are subdivided into groups like nobles, merchants, and craftsmen. Okay. There is an open conflict between Ambrian explorers, treasure hunters, and those, the elder folk, or others, who want to protect the Davokar. So there is open conflict. And this is where primarily, outside of monsters, they're going to have potential dangers inside Davokar with the other factions. Okay. So the elder folk or the Iron Pact want to protect the Davokar. All right. The barbarians are often caught in the middle because they live among the Davokar. They are elder folk treasure seekers. However, there are elder folk treasure seekers and there are Ambrian Davokar protectors. So you could be a human. I mean, you could be a goblin treasure hunter. You can be an ogre treasure hunter. You can be an elven treasure hunter. So you don't have to be. You can be an elder race that's among the party that's doing the treasure seeking or the exploration, right? You do not have to be, if you're an elf, you're instantly against any humans in your party, right? It's not that way. It's basically whether you're in a faction or not. There are 6 factions, the Ambrian nobles, that's 7 duchies. The barbarian clans have 11 clans, and there is rumor of a 12th clan hidden. The Church of Prios, the order of, this is the church broken into 3 tiers of the church. It's a hierarchy. There's Templars, there's priests, and there's, there's one other I can't remember offhand. The Order of Magi, this is basically knowledge seekers. These are magicians. These are people who are adventuring to seek knowledge and learn about nature, etc., etc. They generally cast a type of magic. Then there's the Prios generally use spiritual, as well as barbarian clans can use spiritual magics. You can choose a type of magic regardless. The Queen's Army, this is where we would find basically the Rangers, right? The Queen's Rangers. The Queen's Army is broken into 6 divisions. And the Iron Pact, these are the people trying to protect the Davokar. So nobles are a hierarchy of 7 duchies, and it goes into this in detail in the book, but I won't here. Clans have 11. They're down from 11 to 13. There's rumored a 12 may exist. Again, they go into detail of these clans and their god, etc. in the book, but I'm not going to do it here. Prios, with their 3 branches, they use liturgy and liturgical magics, basically. There's spiritual, there's rituals. The Ordo of Magi seeks knowledge and magic, and the Queen's Army is divided into 6 divisions, but mostly it's the Queen's Rangers. They operate independently of the army, so this is why I think Rangers are the chief class for the Queen's Army, right? Because they would be ones that would be in a group going out to do this stuff. As opposed to in an army being given orders. The Iron Pact are those who believe the ancient treaty and want to enforce it. Okay, the game itself, this I love. This is one of the things I love about the game. It sets itself up into interludes, which is information and moments of narration where no conflicts will exist. There won't be dice checks here. This is where the GM sets the pace or the tone. This is where players describe what they're doing in the town or the off hours, etc. Okay, so interludes, then scenes. Scenes can be initiated generally by the GM, but will and can be initiated by the players. Scenes will create potential conflicts. This is where dice may come up for social negotiations or whatever, combat, etc. Exploration, and then turns. Turns are broke. That's combat. So anytime we use, if we're breaking it into turns, we're into combat. Okay, so it's very simple, and I love it. I love the way it does this. Interludes allows us to communicate with no sweat of conflict. Scenes are then the next phase, and then turns are combat. Player characters are expected to be in league to achieve a goal. Play well together. Even though you may be an elf who doesn't like humans, but you're whatever reason you're in this party, there will be a group goal for the party, and then every individual character will have his own goals. But you are not expected to be against your party. You're expected to be working together to achieve the goal. Play well together. Characters are archetypes, attributes, races, abilities, traits, and mystical traditions. This is your character sheet, right? You pick a class, you pick you get your attribute scores, you pick a race, you select your talents, which is from novice to master. Then you'll have traits, which are racial tweaks, right? If you choose a goblin, he's going to have a racial tweak. Probably Ambrians will have a couple of choices. And then if you use magic or rituals, you're going to have to choose a mystical tradition, whether you are Turgi or whether you are rituals, etc. Okay, that's magic. That's what our character looks like, right? Attributes are what we roll for all challenges. So combat is an attribute check, defense, jumping, sneaking, all of that stuff are roll under your attribute modified by a challenge, right? Modified by another attribute of an opponent or modified by a difficulty. Very simple. Roll equal or under a score. Players make all dice rolls. All dice rolls require one roll equal to or under the single d20. The other dice are rolled for damage and effects of magics, etc. So you won't roll any of the other dice unless it's adding damage, like your dagger or your hand axe, etc., to try to breach their defenses. Turns consist of actions, movement, reactions, free actions. Pretty simple, right? Actions are generally making a combat roll, pulling a weapon out, drinking a potion, that kind of thing, right? Reactions can occur based on other stuff, right? You react to something. If you, for instance, try to disengage from melee, there will be a reaction. Reaction is all of those enemies who are adjacent to that character would get free shots, right? That's a reaction. Free actions are simple things, right? Okay. Combat. This is part of why I loved this game from day one. No stalemates. If they win initiative and they initiated a combat attack roll on an ogre, we roll the dice, and there is no hit miss. Someone is going to be affected by that roll, either the ogre or the attacker. There are no stalemates. We will never have hit miss. We'll never have a round where nothing happens, right? Or we'll never have a round where 3 players miss and 1 player hits, and then the goblins all miss. There's no stalemate rolls, and I love that. This is a big, gigantic thing that changed how I viewed the simple pass-fail D20 of Dungeons and Dragons OSRs. This was it right here. This is what made me a believer in Symbaroum. We don't waste rolls. Player rolls all dice modifying the action attribute. So, it could be something like sneaking. It's a different attribute, but there might be a potential effect to that. But in combat, it would ultimately be whatever attribute uses your weapon and the defense of the opponent of similar. Like, I'm trying to think of, I can't think of the damn attribute score right now. Anyway, damage generally versus your, versus your armor, etc. Then damage versus toughness or what's called pain threshold. And then, of course, if you're reduced to 0 toughness, your character is dead. If you're playing, and you can, again, there are options in the Game Masters to make it a very lethal game, like D&D, where you're dead at 0. Or you can have what are called dying rolls or death rolls. I kind of like this for 1 roll. I would do this maybe 1 time. But after that, that would dictate where your character's at 0. However, when we played it, because Harold and Steve were so diehard lethal guys, we played this with a modifier of instant death. So I'm not certain if I run this locally. They're all used to 5e, so I'll probably run the local game with dying death checks. But I think online with the guys I play with, I would use instant kill, or I would dead at 0. The other big piece of the game, and this is really the end of all we need to talk about just to get your feet wet, shadows and corruption. So shadows, every creature has a shadow and aura. That cannot be seen unless you have Witch Sight. Witch Sight allows you to see whether a shadow is, what's the truth of the soul of the creature, right? And that also gives you an idea of their corruption level. So this shadow color can change as you become corrupted, right? But let's say you're talking to an elf thief, and you think he's lying to you. Somebody in the party has Witch Sight. They can use Witch Sight to see the aura of the creature. If the aura of the creature tells them that they are basically lying to them, or the color of their aura would dictate, ooh, I don't know if we can believe this guy, right? Okay. All creatures have a shadow. It indicates a level of corruption, danger, malice, etc. Whether something is true or false, lying. Shadow is an aura of the creature's soul, a corruption. Witch Sight can be used to see these auras. When a character's corruption level exceeds his resolute level, he becomes an abomination and therefore out of play. So he can become ultimately corrupted and become a beast, a monster, so to speak. So your character will suffer corruption through the course of his adventures depending on certain things, right? And I love this. This is a big part of why I love the game. It's a big part of why I liked the 5th edition Adventures in Middle-earth. Your characters, not unlike Insanity and Call of Cthulhu, and there's lots of games that have something like this where your character slowly is affected by the horrific things they're going to deal with. And this is part of dark, gritty fantasy, right? It's not enough to narrate dark, gritty. We have to actually see our characters affected by those things. And I think this is huge. Characters will level up with experience granted by the GM after successful adventures. These points are traded in to increase stuff, right? That's it. That is Symbaroum. It made sound and look intimidating, but it just isn't. It's pretty straightforward. And again, I think it's to be honest, I said this years ago when I first played Symbaroum. First read it and then played it. I might have even shared this. I might have had a video about this years ago, and I may have even talked to Big Mike about this. I can't remember if it was Big Mike or Steven and Harold, but I talked about this is what I think Dungeons and Dragons should have been, right? Dungeons and Dragons post 4th edition should have been a revolutionary change to Dungeons and Dragons, not this incremental evolutionary stuff. I think it should have been a change in mechanics. I think it should have been a change. I think D&D should have had a setting built into it. I think it should have come less general and had some kind of, it could have still been a general setting, but this should have had a more, just a straight setting built right into the basic game that defines some things. You could always buy other settings, but I also think it should have been an evolutionary change in not only how you're asked to DM, etc. But Symbaroum to me, okay, we could remove shadow conflict and some of the dark gritty, but this to me is what D&D should have evolved into. It should not have looked anything like Pathfinder. It should not have looked anything like the old D&D games. I think it should have used the D20, and I think it should have thought long and hard about ending the pass-fail combat stuff. Right? There's not all the modifiers and the pluses, etc., and we have no stalemates, and we remove the DM from making rolls behind the screen in a kind of adversarial relationship. This, to me, is a masterpiece of where the D20 should be, right? It reminds me a lot of, oh my God, my favorite British game from 1984, 85, Dragon Warriors. Right, it's got a little Dragon Warriors to it, right? Which I love. Dragon Warriors is one of my favorite old games. All right, anyway, I'm done yammering. Thank you for watching. Good day.